The revolving doors of the Lakeshore Grand whispered shut behind me, sealing in a pocket of warm air and polished voices. I had not stepped inside a ballroom like this in nearly 9 years, not since the night my father told an entire town I had vanished on purpose. Tonight, they were honoring him for 38 years of educational leadership, 38 years of guidance, mentorship, and moral authority. That was the phrase printed on the program, clutched in the hands of every guest walking past me. I walked deeper into the lobby, heels tapping softly across the tile. A man in a charcoal suit glanced at me, nodded politely, and kept moving. No one recognized me. That was the strange comfort of time. It erases traces until you choose to place them back. At the far end of the lobby stood a large poster of my father, smiling beneath the words, "Celebrating Principal Robert Grant." The sight of it tightened something beneath my ribs. Even from a distance, his smile looked rehearsed, proud in a way that made your chest lift while your stomach turned. A woman at the registration table lifted her head. "Welcome. Name for check-in." "Lydia." I said. "Lydia Ann." She scanned her list. "You're all set. Ballroom is to your left." They just started the opening remarks. I thanked her and slipped the program she handed me into my coat pocket, right beside the envelope I had carried across 2 cities in nearly a decade. I could feel it against my palm, brittle at the edges, still torn down the middle from where he had folded it once and never again. A pair of teachers from Northview High walked past me, laughing about a student who had sent in a recording for the tribute video. "Robert always knew how to pull the best out of people," one said. "Except his own daughter," the other replied lightly, as if repeating a harmless inside joke. Heat crept up my neck, but I kept walking. If I stopped now, the years would collapse on top of me, and I needed to stay upright. I needed to stand inside that ballroom long enough to speak with my own voice, not the version he had scripted. As I neared the double doors, the muffled sound of applause rolled through the hall. Someone introduced my father. Someone said the word integrity, and the applause grew louder. I placed a hand on the door, steadying myself. If you are listening to this story now, stay with me. Stories like mine are heavy, but they are not hopeless. And if you know someone who needs to hear it, share it forward. The truth can travel farther when more than one person carries it. I pushed the door open just as the applause faded, and the entire room turned toward me. The applause inside the ballroom thinned into scattered murmurs as people drifted back to their seats. I stayed near the wall, half in shadow, my gaze fixed on the stage where my father stood behind a lectern draped in navy cloth. His posture had not changed in all these years, chin lifted, shoulders set, the stance of a man used to being obeyed. He scanned the room with a smile that could have been carved from stone. "I have been honored," he said, "to guide thousands of students toward their future." The word thousands hit me like a tap on the sternum. He had always been loyal to crowds, never to individuals. From a nearby table, a retired guidance counselor leaned toward her friend. "Robert always did expect excellence," she whispered, "especially from Lydia. That girl could do no wrong." Her friend chuckled. "Until she did." My throat tightened, but I held my place. I did not want to be seen yet, only to listen, to watch the version of my family the world had memorized. My father continued, "Northview High has always been more than a school. It is a legacy, one I am proud to leave behind." A woman at a nearby table raised her glass. "To Principal Grant," she called. "A pillar of discipline." Discipline. That word sat in my mouth like iron. I remembered sitting at our kitchen table years ago, my hands shaking as I showed him the script pages I had written in secret. He scanned the first few lines, then pushed the papers back without looking at me. "You have time for nonsense," he said, "but not for what matters." "It matters to me," I whispered then. His eyes hardened. "You are not here to entertain yourself. You are here to achieve." Helen, my mother, rinsed dishes at the sink and never turned around. She dried her hands slowly, like she hoped the moment would disappear if she stayed quiet long enough. Back in the ballroom, someone asked my father a question about leadership. He answered with the same confident cadence he had used my entire childhood. It filled the room easily, the voice people trusted, the voice that had swallowed mine. I stayed in the corner, listening to every word, letting them settle not as memories, but as evidence. My father's voice blended into the low hum of the ballroom, but my mind slid backward to the night everything small inside me first cracked. I was 16, sitting at the kitchen table with a stack of papers pressed to my chest. My script, the one I had written in secret under the glow of a desk lamp while my parents slept. Lines about mothers who left and daughters who stayed. Lines that felt truer than anything I said out loud. I waited until my father finished grading a stack of essays. I wrote something. I said, my drama teacher submitted it to the Carnegie Mellon summer program. He did not look up. Why would she do that because she thought it was good? I said quietly. I got in. Tuition covered. They only accept a few students. He set his pen down with a controlled precision that made the room colder. Lydia, you are not going. I want to study theater. I said. It feels real to me. He finally lifted his eyes. Real. He repeated. Drama is not real. It is a detour. It is not a detour for me. You are not throwing away your future to chase an impulse. Northwestern will not wait for a girl who wastes time. Heat pricked behind my eyes. It is not wasting time if it is my work. He pushed his chair back. The scrape echoed through the room. I did not raise you to be aimless. I am not aimless. You are being dramatic. As always. The words landed like blows. He walked toward the hallway, but I followed him. Please, I said. I need this. He paused. Hand on the light switch. No. You need direction, and that is what I am giving you. He turned the kitchen dark and left me standing alone with my script pages wilting in my hands. Later that night, I slipped into my mother's room. She sat on the edge of the bed, brushing her hair. Do you think he is right? I asked. Helen lowered the brush slowly. Your father wants what is best. What about what I want? Her gaze flickered to the door. Tonight is not the night to push him. It will never be the night. I whispered. She closed her eyes for a moment, the muscles in her jaw tightening, but she said nothing else. Silence spread between us, familiar and suffocating. A week later, my drama teacher pulled me aside after rehearsal. Lydia, they only choose a handful of students from the entire country. She said, do not let anyone make you feel small for that. I tried to smile. My father thinks it is a mistake. She studied me, concerned. Is it your mistake? Or his fear? Her words shook something loose. Fear had built every rule in our house. Fear of failure. Fear of reputation. Fear of a daughter who wanted a life that did not mirror his. That night, I read the acceptance email again in the dark. I whispered the program's name to myself like a promise. Carnegie Mellon. Summer intensive. Full tuition. An escape disguised as a dream. But dreams, in my father's house, were dangerous things. And he made sure I never forgot it. The night I left Maple Hollow, the house felt smaller than it had ever felt, like every wall had moved an inch closer, waiting for me to break first. I had spent the entire week moving in silence, pulling double shifts at Sunrise Cafe off Route 9, filling out my own FAFSA and arranging the dorm assignment in Pittsburgh. I rehearsed the plan over and over, telling myself it was temporary, that I would go and come back and maybe he would listen, but the truth was already tightening around me like a knot. I wrote the letter at the kitchen counter while my parents slept. I love you. I need space. I will be home on Sunday. It was the most careful sentence I had ever written. I folded it once, placed it on the table, and left before dawn. I expected fear. I expected guilt. I expected doubt, but 2 days later, when I returned, I found none of those things waiting for me. The porch light was off. It had never been off in my entire childhood. I tried my house key. It did not turn. I tried again, harder, like the metal might remember the shape of the lock. From inside the house, nothing stirred. "Mom," I called softly. "Dad." The only answer was the rhythmic echo of cicadas in the trees. I stepped back and saw it my suitcase sitting on the porch swing, zipped tight, handle neatly tucked in. Beside it, a plastic bag holding my birth certificate, my social security card, and the note, "You chose this. Good luck." My breath lodged in my throat, sharp and useless. I knocked until my knuckles went numb. "Dad, open the door. I am home." "You said we needed to talk." Silence pressed against the windows. I tried my mother's phone. Straight to voicemail. My father's line rang once, then clicked off. I sank onto the steps, arms wrapped around my knees. The sky dimmed, then darkened, then turned black, and still no one opened the door. Mrs. Collins, our next-door neighbor, walked her dog past the house. She slowed, hesitated, then offered a tight, uncomfortable smile before hurrying on. She knew. They all did. By morning, my aunt had posted a prayer request on Facebook. "Please keep the Grant family in your thoughts. Lydia has run away. We believe she left with an older man. We hope she finds her way back." The comments poured in sympathy, pity, judgment. No one asked for my version. No one reached out. 3 days later, my drama teacher emailed, "Lydia, your father called. He said you are unstable. He asked us to withdraw your summer acceptance until the situation is safe. Please respond if you can." I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. He had not only locked me out, he had rewritten the entire story and handed out copies before I even realized what role he wanted me to play. By the end of the week, the Carnegie Mellon program marked my file as incomplete. My enrollment status shifted from accepted to withdrawn. I felt something inside me close quietly, like a door I no longer had the strength to knock on. I packed my suitcase for the second time in 7 days and caught a bus to Milwaukee with $41 in my wallet. I did not look back at the house as it disappeared behind the trees. It had already closed itself to me long before I stepped off the porch. Milwaukee did not welcome me so much as it tolerated me. I rented a room the size of a storage closet from a woman who never asked questions as long as the rent slid under her door on time. Most nights, I worked at Sunrise Diner's sister location off Highway 45, pouring coffee for truckers and students who did not look at me long enough to notice the circles under my eyes. One night, during a break behind the counter, my coworker Maya nudged my elbow. "You going to school?" she asked. "I am taking a few classes at the community college." I said, "Mostly general education." "You talk like someone who should be studying more than that." I gave a small smile. "Talking is free." She studied me for a second, like she wanted to ask more. But the bell over the door chimed and she let it go. When my shifts ended, I took the late bus home and wrote scenes on a second-hand laptop whose spacebar stuck every other sentence. Words were the only things that did not walk away from me. At 20, I stepped backstage at a tiny black box theater in the 3rd Ward district. The director, a wiry man with paint on his jeans, watched me run lighting cues. "You write too, right?" he asked. "Some things," I said carefully. "You should show me." I hesitated, then handed him a monologue I had written at 2 in the morning about a girl who lost her own name. He read it, then looked up with something like recognition. "This is not just good," he said. "It is yours." The theater offered me a slot for a one-woman show. 3 nights, 10 seats each, small, fragile, and terrifying. On the second night, after my final line, a woman approached me in the hallway. "I am writing an article for The Atlantic," she said, "about estranged families. Would you talk to me?" I almost said no, but she added, You do not have to use your real name. So I became Lydia Ann, someone who could speak without fear of being dragged back into a life that did not want me. The article published 6 months later. The morning it went live, I checked my email and found 3 unanswered security alerts. Someone had tried to reset my password at dawn. I stared at the screen, pulse quickening, and whispered the truth I had avoided for years. He saw it. 3 days after the failed password resets. My phone buzzed while I was restocking napkins at the diner. A message from an unsaved number flashed on the screen. I found something. It's about you, Megan. My chest tightened. I had not heard from my cousin in nearly 9 years. I typed a single word, "What?" but I erased it before sending. Instead, I slipped the phone into my apron and waited until my shift ended. When I finally called her from the bus stop, the wind nearly drowned out her voice. "Lydia," she said, uncertain, almost breathless. "It is really you. It is me," I said. "What did you find?" She inhaled sharply. "I was helping Dad clean the attic. You know how he keeps everything in boxes? Old tax returns, my school projects, those awful ceramic figurines Mom collected." She stopped, her breath shaking. There was a box labeled School Records 2013. At the bottom, inside a zippered bag, was an envelope with your handwriting. The air around me thinned. Describe it. Off-white, folded once. Blue ink. Her voice broke. I read it. Lydia. The real letter. It did not say anything. They told us. It said. My throat tightened painfully. "You found the one I left on the table." "Yes." "You wrote that you loved them, that you needed space, that you would be back on Sunday." She swallowed. "We were told you ran away in anger, that you refused to come home, that you left with someone dangerous." I closed my eyes. "He hid it. He hid it," she repeated, trembling. "And he let all of us believe we lost you." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Cars passed in slow, blurred lines. The cold gnawed through my sleeves. "Megan," I said softly, "why are you telling me this now? Because I believed him," she whispered. "I believed every word. And when I read your letter, I realized we let him erase you. I am sorry." The apology landed somewhere deep, somewhere untouched for years. "You did not know. I should have," she said, "but I did not. And you deserved someone who did." I heard the rustle of paper as she lifted the letter. I scanned it. "I will send it. You need to have it." "Thank you," I said, and the words shook harder than I wanted them to. "Send it." 5 minutes after we hung up. My phone buzzed again. A single image filled the screen, my handwriting, younger and smoother, untouched by fear. I printed the scan at the library near my apartment. When the page slid out of the machine, warm and smelling faintly of ink, I pressed my fingers to the curve of each letter. For the first time in nearly 9 years, I was looking at proof that I had once been telling the truth, and he had buried it. The printed letter stayed on my kitchen table for a full week, lying beside a stub of a candle and a half-finished cup of cold coffee. Every time I walked past it, something inside me pulled tight, as if the paper itself remembered everything I had tried to forget. On the 7th morning, I opened my laptop and searched the Maple Hollow School District page. A banner stretched across the home page. "Join us in celebrating Principal Robert Grant, a legacy of integrity." The word integrity scraped something raw inside me. That afternoon, I packed the letter into a plastic sleeve, slid my Atlantic clipping beside it, and drove back to Maple Hollow for the first time in nearly 9 years. The house looked smaller than I remembered, paint peeling, bushes overgrown, as if time had been scraping it away the same way it scraped at me. I stood on the porch where I had once begged to be let in. When I rang the bell, I expected silence. Instead, The door cracked open. My mother stepped into the frame. Lydia. She breathed, the name catching in her throat like it had to climb past years of swallowed things. I stayed on the porch. I need to ask you something. She opened the door a little wider but did not step aside. Of course. Did you know? I said. About the letter. The real one. Her eyes closed slowly, as if the truth itself stung. Yes. The single word knocked the air out of my chest. I steadied myself on the railing. She wrapped her cardigan tighter. Your father said you were unstable. He said you left with someone older. He said contacting you would only make things worse. And you believed that. I believed him, she whispered, because I was afraid of him, too. I stared at her, at the woman who had once braided my hair before school, who had turned away at the kitchen sink while my father dismantled every dream I had dared to say out loud. I wanted to come after you, she said softly. I told myself I would. And then another day passed. And another. I swallowed the ache rising in my throat. You let him erase me. Her shoulders shook. I did. A long, thin silence pulled between us. Not forgiveness. Not anger. Something colder. Distance settling where closeness should have lived. Finally, I stepped back from the doorway. I am going to the ceremony tonight. Fear flickered across her face. He will not handle it well. He handled it his way for 9 years. I said, now it is my turn. I walked down the steps, the letter burning against my ribs. The ballroom lights dimmed as I stepped through the doorway, the hum of conversation settling into a curious hush. My father stood at the center of the stage, framed by a navy backdrop and a scrolling slideshow of smiling students, science fairs, and carefully curated memories. His voice carried across the room, smooth and steady, the same voice that had guided assemblies, lectured parents, and shaped reputations for nearly 4 decades. And I am proud, he said, to have served the Maple Hollow community with integrity. That word again. Integrity. I moved down the side aisle. A few heads turned. A few whispers rose like static. When I reached the open space before the stage, his eyes landed on me, and the color drained from his face. He recovered quickly, adjusting the microphone. We will take questions later, he said, but his voice shook for the first time. For now. Let us, hi, I said, stepping forward. I am Lydia Grant, his daughter. The room froze. Forks paused mid-air. Chairs creaked as people shifted to see me better. My father leaned toward the microphone. Lydia, do not do this here, he whispered, too close to be casual. I kept my voice steady. You told everyone I disappeared, that I ran away, that I was unstable. You said I left a hateful note. Gasps broke across the room in small bursts. I pulled the plastic sleeve from my coat and held it up. This is the real note, the one I left on the kitchen table. A murmur rippled like a wave. Someone near the front whispered, she came back. Another. I remember the prayer chain. Her aunt said I unfolded the letter. My hands shook, but the words did not. I love you. I need space. I will be home on Sunday. I let the syllables settle. Not a single person moved. Does that sound like someone who ran away in anger? My voice tightened. Or someone who believed her family would still be there when she came back. My father stepped forward, his composure cracking. That is not the full story. Lydia struggled. I raised a hand. No. I struggled because you shut the door. A retired counselor stood abruptly. Mrs. Willows, gray hair pinned neatly, eyes sharp. Robert, you told us she had a breakdown. We withdrew her summer placement at your request. Another voice, Mr. Henderson, the former theater director. You shut down the drama program that year. Said it was distracting students from academics. My father stiffened. We made decisions as a family. Megan rose from a table near the back, holding her phone high. That letter was hidden in our attic, inside a box labeled school records from 2013. My dad and I found it last week. All eyes shifted to her. She continued, voice trembling but clear. He hid it. For nearly 9 years. And he let us believe something that was not true. A murmur grew louder, building into something sharper. A parent, someone whose child my father had praised for years, stood and pointed at him. You made her disappear to protect your image. My father's jaw clenched. You do not understand the situation. Then explain. Someone challenged. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. His hands shook at his sides. The slideshow behind him kept running. Oblivious images from a life he had carefully edited, now unraveling in real time. The superintendent folded his arms and stepped back from the podium, his expression carved with disappointment. Teachers I had known since childhood looked at my father as if seeing him for the first time. My mother, sitting 3 tables from the stage, kept her eyes on her lap. Her shoulders were drawn inward, as if bracing for a storm she knew had been gathering for years. I stepped closer to the microphone. I rebuilt my life without any of you. I found work, friends, and a name that was safe to use. But I came tonight because I am done being erased. The silence thickened, not hostile, just heavy with recognition. I slid the letter back into its sleeve. My father built his reputation on discipline, guidance, and truth. But when the truth was inconvenient, he buried it. He buried me. A teacher near the aisle wiped her eyes. Someone else whispered, all these years. My father took 1 step back, then another, until the lectern shielded only his shoulders. He looked smaller than I had ever seen him. I turned away from the stage, the weight of 9 years lifting as I walked toward the exit. No applause followed. No voices called my name. Only the quiet realization settling over every table in the room. Not everything they had celebrated tonight had been real. The hallway outside the ballroom was quiet enough that I could hear the soft thud of my own footsteps. My hands were still trembling. The letter pressed against my ribs like a heartbeat that did not belong to me anymore. The exit door opened with a heavy sigh, spilling me into the cool night air behind the Lakeshore Grand. The city hummed in the distance, steady and indifferent. I leaned against the brick wall, letting the cold settle into my lungs. A few minutes later, the door clicked again. Megan stepped outside, her phone still in her hand. Her face flushed from everything she had just done. You ran out fast, she said gently. I have been running for 9 years, I answered. This time, I just chose the direction. She came closer but did not touch me. She must have known I needed space to breathe. Lydia, the way they looked at him when you read that letter. I do not think anyone has ever seen him like that. They saw the truth, I said. That was enough. Megan hesitated. Are you okay? No, I said, because pretending would have felt like slipping back into the old script. But I am not broken anymore. A car passed on the street below, headlights sweeping across the pavement. I should have found you sooner, she murmured. You found me when the truth did, I said. That is when it mattered. She nodded, eyes shining. What happens now? I pulled the letter from my coat, smoothing the creases with my thumb. The handwriting looked younger, hopeful, unaware of how far it would be carried. He spent 9 years building his legacy on silence. I said, I took it back tonight. Megan let out a shaky breath. You were brave. I shook my head. No, I was overdue. We stood side by side as the ballroom lights dimmed behind us. 2 silhouettes stepping away from a story that had once decided our names for us. This time, we walked forward by choice.